Welcome to the Own Your Peace podcast. This is Andy Thewison, your host. This week, we're going to be diving deep on all things eclipse. We are in the thick of eclipse season. This is coming out on March 12th, so you'll be listening to it then, or maybe even a little bit later. Eclipses are starting on March 14th. The true eclipse portal, if you will, opened up with a new moon in Pisces a couple weeks ago. So we are in the thick of this energy. So if you have been feeling anxious or untethered, or really feeling like you have this really unsettled energy right now, that is what eclipses do. They kind of shake us off our center and help realign us to where we need to be. So that is what a lot of us are feeling right now, me included. I have been feeling anxious and have this nervous energy in my body. And I also have been feeling a little nauseous. Those are all things that are normal during this eclipse season. So if you are feeling any of those things, my friend, you are in good company. I wanted to kind of do a little history lesson, if you will, about what eclipses even are and why do they make such a difference in our lives. If you have been following the spiritual world for a while, you'll hear lots of things about eclipses and eclipses being fated events and things happening, shifts being made, and all those things are true. And they are tied to shifting things up within our lives. We have two very distinct types of eclipses. We have lunar eclipses and solar eclipses. And we typically have a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse in the spring. And then we have a lunar and solar eclipse in the fall. Typically, those are March, April, and then September and October. And they are always tied to where the north and the south node are. Nodes shift every 18 months, and there is a axis theme. For the past 18 months, we have been in an Aries Libra axis, which is all about Aries being about independence and about the me and what I want and where I want to be going. And then we have Libra, which is all about balance and fairness and being in a collective environment. It's about the we. So really the theme for the last 18 months that you have been kind of working on for yourself is the me versus the we. How do I show up independently in my own way of showing up in the world? And then how do I show up in my community and my friendships and my relationships? And a lot of relationships were really challenged during this last 18-month cycle because that was getting highlighted. If your relationship needed a shift or needed a change or actually needed to end, that was shown to you during this last 18 months. Now in January, we had a new shift. We got a little sneak peek back in September with the Pisces energies. But the new shift that happened on January 11th, those nodes shifted into Virgo and Pisces. And the difference between, just think about the me versus the we, now we move into this really beautiful energy of the practical and the spiritual. Virgo, of course, being that very practical energy. How do I show up? And how do I make tangible things real? How do I create systems and programs that help me thrive? And then we have Pisces, which is ever the dreamer, which is ruled by Neptune, which is kind of our unconscious and our spirituality and really tied to past lives and where we are going and where we have been even. So we have this beautiful axis of the practical in Virgo versus the spiritual in Pisces. So those are going to be some major themes for the next 18 months. I want you to be thinking about what things have started to show up for you. Are you looking at how you're doing in your practical day-to-day routines and the mundane parts of your life? Do you need to shift things up in those routines? And then also, again, are there shifts and changes you need to make in the spiritual part of your life? Do you need to add more meditation? Do you need to add more journaling practices? This is a beautiful time to find balance between the practical and the spiritual, because I have been on both sides of this coin. I have been highly in the practical side of things where I really neglected spirituality because I wanted to be a hustler, if you will, and spent a lot of times focusing on the practical side of my life. I had spreadsheets, I had all the things. And then there's been times where I let the pendulum swing in the totally opposite direction. And that was all about the spiritual for me, diving in. But if you're too far in the spiritual, not a whole lot gets done. And if you're too much in the practical, you're not allowing intuition and spirituality and your connection to your higher self to guide your steps. You're taking frustrated actions forward without them being guided by intention and your intuition. So we do need to bridge the intuitive spiritual side of ourselves with the practical human side of ourselves. And that, my friend, is the theme that will be guiding us for the next 18 months, which is where I live. My natal north node is in Virgo and my south node is in Pisces. So I came into this life with a really strong foundation in the spiritual. Of course, with a lot of, conditioning and the way that I was raised, that wasn't as celebrated in my life. And now it is very much a big part of who I am. A lot of spiritual things come very easily to me and they just are who I am. And the practical side was highlighted growing up. I flow between the two of being really practical and grounded, and then also being very spiritual and kind of woo-woo. And that is the life I live. And so this energy is very familiar to me. And it is one that I love helping people navigate through, because you need both. You need to have that practical grounded, let's plan this out, let's map this out, let's make a plan. But you also need that spiritual side of yourself that is very much tied to your intuition and your higher self, and receiving that spiritual guidance by going inward. So I'm really excited for this next 18 months and what these eclipses are going to bring forward for people to look at. When we look at eclipses, there is a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse. And so our first eclipse for the month is on March 14th. And this is a full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo. So this is kicking things off with us looking at the practical aspects of our life, us looking at the mundane. And also Virgos are very critical. They have a very critical eye. So where are we being too hard on ourselves? Where are we being too critical? These are things that are going to start coming up. And when we look at what a lunar eclipse is when the earth blocks the sunlight from reaching the moon, casting a shadow on the moon. So when we think about that, we think about a full moon. Full moons are all about release. They're a more inward thing, coming up with subconscious blocks that are in our way and ways that we can let go of what's no longer serving us. So always remember that a lunar eclipse is tied to a full moon, and lunar eclipses are about going inward. What needs to be shifted? What needs to be clear? Allowing hidden emotions to come to the surface. It's a more of a yin energy. It's more of an inward focus, reflection. It's more past focus. It's going to maybe bring up some memories or some beliefs that you have experienced in the past that are very much still playing out in our lives. If we go into psychology, most of our beliefs about ourselves were formed in our first 7 years of life. No fault to our parents. A lot of the beliefs we have nothing to do with them. It's just in our observation. Think about a 6-year-old kid and them observing the world. They don't have the logic to make sense of things. So you can see your parents fighting over money, and all of a sudden your little 6-year-old self is terrified of money because it causes fighting and strife. And that's a belief that maybe you need to take a look at and clear out. So right now, with this first lunar eclipse in Virgo, we're going to be looking at some beliefs, and they're going to be beliefs around where we are over critical on ourselves. Where are we holding ourselves back in that realm? So that's what that first eclipse will be. And that again is on March 14th. So, just a couple days if you're listening this on launch day, or maybe it's a couple days past, but we're still very much in this energy for the next 2 weeks until we get to the solar eclipse in Aries. So those are the things to look at right now and think about as this eclipse season is in full swing. Eclipses are going to bring about fated events. So when we're talking about Virgo, maybe there's some shifts in your routine. Maybe there's some changes in the home life. Also, always look to your birth chart. I created this free guide. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can grab that free guide, but I really go into a lot of details on each particular house. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to pull up your birth chart. I'll put a link in the show notes as well on how to pull up a birth chart. And when you do that, I want you to look at what house is going to be activated for you during this eclipse season. So for me, mine is going to be in the 10th house. So all things public persona are going to be highlighted for me during this first eclipse. So what is happening for me? I'm trying to launch an outward facing podcast. There are a lot of beliefs about me not being good enough, or I don't have enough intelligence to put myself out there, or I don't have the right things to say, or nobody's going to listen to this thing. All of that has been smacking me in the face. And I am choosing to believe and trust the intuitive side of myself that I am being led in this creation of this podcast. So think about that. Let's kind of just do a little brief overview of the houses, because I want you to be able to walk away with this with some information. I have the most fun explaining the houses like this. So if you are a Hunger Games fan, and I think it's the second or third book where they're in the arena and the arena is set on a clock. And when you step over into a different sector, a different, challenge or a predator is released for them to have to deal with that challenge, right? So the different things kind of activate based on where you were on the clock of the arena. That is a very good visual representation of how the houses are in astrology. So there's 12 houses and each of them is ruled by a different sign. So the first house is ruled by Aries, which is all about the me. It's about my personal persona. You're always going to have your rising sign in the first house because it's all about you and how people perceive you. So if your Virgo is in the first house, you're a Virgo rising, you're going to be looking at how you see yourself, how you want to show up differently to the world around you. And then we move into the second house, which is ruled by Taurus, which is all about what we value, how we make money, our money story. So if your second house is getting activated right now, then you're going to be looking at what you value and maybe even your money story and how you perceive your own personal value. And then we move to the third house. If your third house is getting activated by Virgo, it's going to be about your communications, about how you're showing up on social media. Relationships with your siblings are also ruled by that third house. So those are some themes that might be coming up for you during this first eclipse. And then the arena moves to the fourth house, which is ruled by Cancer, which is home and family, created in the early childhood development. It is that our inner world that is ruled by that fourth house. And then we move to the fifth house, which is ruled by Leo, which is about fun and play and having a good time and our personal expression. So those will be themes for you if your Virgo is in that fifth house. And then we move to the sixth house, which is ruled by Virgo. It is going to be about health and wellness and routines and the day-to-day and the mundane. Sorry, the sixth house is not sexy, but there's a lot to be said about the sixth house. And then we move to the seventh house, which is all about relationships, our partnerships, whether that be our romantic partnerships or business partnerships. It is all about the we, right? Because it's also ruled by Libra. And then we move to the eighth house, which is all about our death and rebirth, things that are taboo, burning down and restarting. It's very Phoenix energy because it is ruled by Scorpio. And then we move to the ninth house, which is ruled by Sagittarius. And Sagittarius energy is very much the scholar. It's an adventure and seeking and higher knowledge and higher education. So if your Virgo is in the ninth house, those will be themes that will be coming to light for you during this eclipse. And then we move to the 10th house, which is ruled by Capricorn. And Capricorn is all about work life. If you know Capricorns, they mean business and they are here to build something that lasts. So it is our public persona. It's what we're building. It's our work life. If your 10th house is being activated right now during this Virgo full moon eclipse, that's me. Those will be themes that you'll be looking at. And then we're moving to the 11th house, which is ruled by Aquarius. So Aquarius energy is very much collective energy. It is energy of big ideas and expansion. And how do we as a collective do better? And we're in a lot of Aquarian energy right now. This is about everyone having an equal seat and everyone having a voice right now. So you're seeing that play out in real time in so many different ways throughout the collective, that this whole me above everybody else energy is kind of shifting to this more, hey, you have good ideas, I have good ideas, let's put these together and let's create something new that's going to help everyone and not just a small group of people. It's really exciting to see. So that's 11. And then we move into the 12th house, which is ruled by Pisces. So it's going to have a lot of Pisces energy, which is all about what's under the surface. It is our unconsciousness. It is what beliefs are hidden even from ourselves. So if your 12th house is getting highlighted right now, you're going to be really looking at deep-seated beliefs about yourself, secrets that are even hidden from you coming to light during this eclipse season. So those are some important things to think about. I have that free guide where all this stuff is written down, and there's, some different activities that you can do that really harness this energy. Those are the 12 houses. That is the arena that's getting activated. So where is Virgo landing for you in the arena? A kind of a fun way to look at it. So that's the first eclipse. And again, that's a lunar eclipse. So it's on the inward side of things. It is things that are happening under the surface of our lives, our beliefs about ourselves, because it's tied to that full moon where we can release them, because full moons are all about releasing what no longer serves us and letting things go. Things have come to fruition and now we can let them go. And then we move to the next eclipse on March 29th. And that is a new moon solar eclipse. The solar eclipse is always tied to a new moon. And a solar eclipse is when the moon blocks the sun. This always happens in that new moon phase. It is more outward energy. It's beginnings and new transformations. And it's more this external change. It's not internal change. It's external change. Things are shifting. Things are changing. New opportunities are coming in. Things are really hopping with a new moon solar eclipse. It's really exciting. This is where transformation happens. This is more a yang energy where we take action, we move forward on things. And it's really future focused, where the lunar eclipse is more past focused. We're clearing up things that we need to from our past. So the new moon solar eclipses are all about moving forward and like making huge lasting changes in our lives. And that's why they are paired together. And typically the lunar eclipse goes first, and then we have the solar eclipse because we clear what no longer serves so that we can make room for something new coming in. And this is in Aries. So this, the final test, if you will, if you receive the lessons from the last access. And remember, that was an Aries Libra access. So this particular eclipse is going to be about you and your personal expression and how you are meant to show up. And again, it's going to be on that same wheel we just talked about. You're going to find where Aries rules on your chart. And that's the particular area where there's going to be that emphasis on yourself. For example, if we go back to the wheel, my Aries rules my 5th house, which is about personal expression and putting myself out there and fun and play and activity. So those will be things for me to look at. Am I having fun? Am I showing up? Am I expressing myself creatively? Is there new ways that I can express myself creatively? See how those two things, it almost makes me giggle. You can't make this stuff up. Right now, what am I doing? I'm letting go of everything that's kept me from doing what I'm doing right now with this podcast and all these beliefs I have about myself, about putting myself out there, letting all that go. And then I'm moving into this new platform of expressing myself creatively. It's amazing, guys. You can't make this stuff up. These eclipses are so in alignment. And when we go inward, when we allow ourselves to align with this energy, big things shifts and happen. I'm excited to see how this goes for me. I'll follow up in a month and tell you how it goes. But we are being guided right now. And with this solar eclipse in Aries, I really want to think you to look at yourself and then look at the house that's activated. Aries is bold. It takes action. It's the first sign. We are moving into a new astrological year when we hit Aries season. We're moving into that spring equinox. I always call winter this time of going inward. It's not a time to really take action. It's a time to plan and prep. We go through Capricorn season where it is plotting and planning and kind of going inward, but keeping what we're doing to ourselves. And then we move into Aquarius season where it is really, let's think of new out of the box ways to make these plans play out. And then we move into Pisces where it's this expansive, dreamy energy of subconsciousness, but we're still pretty much asleep because we're dealing with the unconscious. And now we move into that spring equinox when Aries season begins and starts the new astrological year. This always, for me, feels like the new year. I've always used to like try to like make goals and plans in January and like start the new year off fresh with all this fast energy. And it never settled in for me, particularly till Aries season. Then it was okay, cool. Now it's go time. Now I can start planning season, start going. That's when we switch from a lot of this yin energy into really yang move forward energy. So as you're in this space and time of eclipse season, I want you to not be fearful. I want you to be hopeful. And I want you to believe that everything is always unfolding for your highest, greatest good, even if it feels like crap is hitting the fan and everything's not going your way. I want you to hold on to the belief that everything is happening and everything may be falling out of place so things can fall into place. Even if it feels like you're on the bus and the wheels are falling off and you're not getting anywhere right now, maybe that's on purpose. One of my favorite activities that I have embraced this past year, I have a gate 57. So in human design, switching gears to a little bit. And gate 57 is the fear of the future. And if you have gate 57, you know this well. You have Samsonite baggage for your future tripping. You are constantly 10 steps ahead, worrying about the future, playing everything out. And it typically is worst case scenario land. Oh my goodness, I'm going to run out of money. What if nobody buys? It's nonstop. My head is constantly in a space of worrying about the future. So one thing that I'm working on right now is being very, very present. When I find myself like going into future tripping, which is it slips so fast, people. I can just be sitting there enjoying my day and all of a sudden I'm like 10 steps ahead worrying about the future. It slips really fast for me. And if you do have gate 57, you are probably very familiar with this. But I come back to present and I'm like, all right, I see you, worst case scenario. But how about I flip that? And I focus on, okay, what's the best thing that could happen? What's the best case scenario? Because our thoughts create our beliefs, which create what we create for ourselves. So if I'm constantly worried about the future and I'm literally building a timeline to that worst case scenario. I've seen it play out so many times in my life. But when I bring it all on back and I'm really present, I'm like, well, right now we're good. We have plenty of money in the bank. Everything's good. We look really good right now. I don't have anything going forward, but right now we're great. And I sit in that space of being super present. And then I start living in best case scenario land. What if this happened? Wouldn't that be amazing if this happened? And I really start to play. The more we can not take ourselves so seriously and we can live in play and fun and imagination, that is when we are the most connected to source, to God, to universal energy. That is when we really allow ourselves to open up our creativity. And then the new ideas come in that will shift a timeline into a higher frequency and into higher places that we're going. So whether you have a gate 57 or not, I'm sure you're future tripping on some level. It just is a little bit more intense if you have a gate 57. The flip side of that is that you have the gate of the psychic. So yes, I do get psychic hits all the time. I kind of have this knowing of things that are going to happen when I stay out of fear. That's the big thing. Anything in the spleen, as long as you stay out of fear and focus on using it as the gift that it is, the intuitive gift that it is, then it's great. But it's this kind of flip a coin type of thing with any of the gates that are activated within your spleen. We'll get into it more, but just keep that in mind. If you have any gates in the spleen, there's a fear. And on the other side of that fear is a really strong intuitive gift, but you've got to keep it not about yourself and have it be outward facing. When I worry about my own self, that's when all that fear of the future comes in. But when I just am like, cool, I'm good right now, I'm in the present, that's when the strong intuitive hits of what's going to happen come for me. And I just know things. And I've always just known things throughout my whole life. But when I get stuck in fear and worrying about what it could possibly happen, it's not even real. So that's where you got to come back to that present moment and really focus on, okay, let's play with this. Okay, there's that. But what's the flip side of that? What's the best that could happen? And when you play in that place, it's magic, friends. It's so magic. And that's when you really start to manifest some exciting things in your life. So that's what I wanted to go over with these eclipse seasons. So there's some really powerful energies coming in for you to focus on. And this next 18 months is going to be really cool as we start to find balance between the practical and the spiritual. That is what I do. That is where I play. If you are on my email list, then you know about Your Best Life Club, which is a whole program I have where I release new extended content every Friday with tools that help you balance the practical with the spiritual. I give you tools that take these woo-woo concepts and I make them practical and tangible and how you can use them to shift your life moving forward. So I'm really excited about it. The feedback that I've gotten thus far from the few members who have already joined at this point have been miraculous and so fun. And I am so grateful for that connection I have. I will leave you there today. Repeat after me. Everything is always happening for my greatest, highest good. Even if it feels like everything's falling apart, it's falling right into place. Much love, friends, and I will see you next time.